Hi, guys. Welcome back. I'm going to ask that somebody tell me how the mic sounds before I even jump in. I don't want to happen what happened earlier to happen again. So I'll wait to hear you. I see Cherry's Jubilee. Hello and welcome back. I also see Fairy Girl. Welcome back. Let me know, guys, what you're hearing. If you're hearing the same thing. Okay. Thanks, Cam. Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm so sorry that happened. It was hello, Jeanette. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And I also see a seat at the King's table with Tanisha. Welcome back. And Cam, here you are. And then Grow. Welcome back, guys. I'm so sorry. Hopefully everybody can sign back in and we can go ahead with our chat tonight. Good evening to you, Annie Welker. Hopefully I sound okay to you. I'm so sorry that happened. Awesome. Thank you so much. Donna Ray McKell. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Jeanette. I appreciate it. What it was briefly before I jump back in and give you guys all the information. There's a little button in the Creator Studio that just needed to be turned on. Okay. Thank you, Jessica J. Awesome, Fairy Girl. Thank you. Thank you. Half the battle knowledges. Oh my God. I am technologically stumped when one bad thing happens. So we're not going to dwell on it. Hopefully it'll go the way we need it to go so we can talk about this. So let me start over. Okay, guys, I'm going to briefly go over what was already stated in that live chat, which I think I started with the idea of implicit and explicit trust. Implicit trust is the belief that someone is trustworthy. It kind of assumes trust. I'm just going back over what I already stated. I see you guys signing in. Implicit trust is kind of how we are in daily life when we believe that we are going to receive a certain level of attention, a certain level of trust, worthiness from other people, and a certain level of humanity. So an example of that, an example of implicit trust would be we can go to a drive-through and we implicitly believe that someone at the drive-through that's using, their skills and they've been hired, they're going to put our food together the right way. They are going to respect the fact that they need to keep their hands clean, they need to cover their hair, they need to be courteous, they need to make sure that our food is clean, untouched, or, not contaminated. Implicit trust is we are just going to that restaurant believing that the people there are trustworthy, that we don't have to deal with an individual or a company that disrespects our right for clean food, right? A clean place to eat, sit, and mingle. Right? We implicitly believe that those individuals are trustworthy. Another example of implicit trust is we believe that when we get into our car, there are other people on the road who, number one, doesn't want to die prematurely. They want to drive safely. They respect the rules and the regulations of the road. They love their family and friends, and they wouldn't want to cause us harm. So we have this, internal belief system that other people are trustworthy, that nobody's going to drive without a license. Nobody is going to drive without car insurance. Everybody is going to be safe. That's our trust. It's assumed that we have in another person. Explicit trust is directly expressed, You guys know from communication with me over many years that I'm going to make sure that I give you correct, research-based, clinical knowledge and experience that can benefit you. You also know that when we have technical issues like I had tonight, that I'm not just going to leave you hanging. I'm going to restart it and see if we can go from there, right? So I am saying verbally to you, you can trust me. And so that's explicit trust. I'm being very open with, my ability to be trusted, or your ability to trust me. Okay. Implicit, explicit trust. Now, there are some research studies in psychology that suggest that we wouldn't have trust we wouldn't have, I'll put it this way, we wouldn't have a civilized society if we didn't have some trust in the next human being. We wouldn't have a society because we wouldn't be able to trust that we could go somewhere and eat clean food and be respected. We would not be able to trust that the library would be open today because it told us it was going to be open at 9 a.m. We wouldn't have, the ability to purchase vehicles or um, travel in peace if we didn't have some kind of internalized trust in how the system operates. Does that make sense, guys? Without that implicit trust, we're just kind of left hanging. We don't know what to expect from this human to that human, that organization to that organization. And this is not to say that we trust everything in society, because as you know, there are organizations, there's companies, there's people, there's other areas of life that are questionable, but we do have to have some level of implicit trust, to function. So, a sociologist, you guys are probably well aware of this, a sociologist by the name of Max Weber, he explained in some of his research in the past, I'll post it in the description box for you, but he basically believed that we wouldn't have a society at all if we didn't have some kind of implicit trust in the next human being, which is an assumed trust. Without that hinted at or assumed trust that other person displays to us, it would be really difficult for us to exist in society. And so Max Weber believed our society would not operate as it is if we didn't have some kind of implicit trust. Now, you may be wondering, what happens if, my family, I can't trust in my family. I can't trust the person who wronged me. So how do I gain that back? We're going to talk about that a little bit later, because I want to give you some ideas as to how to learn to trust again if you've been wronged. Now, there are research studies on betrayal trauma, and betrayal trauma really gets at the fact that trauma can happen if you were betrayed by a person that you believed 100% had your well-being and best interest in mind. Betrayal trauma doesn't have to happen if a family member betrays your trust. It can also happen if you believe in someone that has promised you that they are going to be trustworthy, but they totally did the opposite. That can cause betrayal trauma, which I can post my previous live chat on this topic because there's a series of behaviors that you have to observe and that you have to learn to deal with, or at least become aware of, that causes the behavior, the betrayal trauma. Excuse me, guys. So technically, it doesn't have to be a family member. I'm going to go over that one more time. It doesn't have to be a family member. It could be anybody that has told you that they are worth your trust, that you don't have to question them, but they did the complete opposite. There's a series of events that has to happen in order for you to actually experience the traumatic piece of that betrayal. That's what I was trying to say a couple minutes ago. It was all jumbled up, at least in my mind it was. So betrayal trauma can happen really, I think, more commonly than you may think. It's something that research is really zoning in on because it's a real thing. Now, how does betrayal trauma cross paths with trust issues? Well, and I mentioned this in our live chat a couple minutes ago that we had tech issues with, that if you have a parent, because trust starts at infancy. I think I mentioned earlier that trust starts when the baby is, born, and doctors and nurses put the baby on the mom's skin, on the dad's skin. There's a reason for that. There's a biological and neurochemical process there that happens. Trust is built by that physiological connection, but it's also built over time. in the relationship with the parent. So let's say, for example, you were born, you had that skin to skin contact with mom and dad, you trusted mom and dad, had your best interests at heart. When you get home, though, mom is struggling with connecting with you. Why? Because mom has postpartum challenges that causes her to just want nothing to do with a crying infant, right? And so now mom is kind of segregating you from love and affection, segregating you from feeling held and secure, right? And so attachment begins there. And if that situation doesn't correct itself in enough time, then you can develop a loss of trust. And you're developing a loss of trust with the parent, the one that is the leader of that most important relationship in your whole life, right? Because the parent-child relationship is the primary example of healthy relationships and what they look like and what it entails and how to engage in them. So when that parent-child relationship is disrupted, detachment emotionally and psychologically occurs. You lose that sense of trust with the parent. And then over time, you develop attachment issues that can then go into adulthood and cause relationship issues there. And that's the scary part of this. Now, once you become an adult and you experienced that childhood, lack of trust, now you're in an adult situation where now you have to trust strangers. Now you have to trust your boss. Now you have to trust romantic relationships, right? Friends, professors, colleagues, all of that. Let's say you've been betrayed in all of those relationships. Now we're possibly dealing with betrayal trauma because the trauma started in childhood, it maintained itself unto adulthood, and now you're in a life where attaching to other adults is a really difficult process, and you most likely have been wronged in those relationships as well. And so what happens there? Well, betrayal trauma. So I'm going to make sure that I post in the description box those live chats of mine from the past where I talked about betrayal trauma. It's a very destabilizing reality that I can't trust the very people I feel that I should be able to trust. Implicit trust. It's a belief in someone as trustworthy. And you can't have implicit trust if you've been wronged in those relationships that you thought you could handle. You thought that, there was mutual love and respect. Those relationships where you thought you were safe. You can't exist in those in a healthy fashion if you feel that you've been betrayed and wronged, right? Now, you may be wondering, what is trust? How does psychology define it? Well, and I posted it in the description box for you. It's an article on trust, and it really breaks down. I'm going to highlight it a little bit later. It really breaks down the psychology of what trust is. But here's how they define it. Trust is an individual's calculated, hear this really good, calculated exposure. Did I say that right? Exposure. Their calculated exposure to the risk of harm. Let me go back over that since I botched that up a little bit. Trust is an individual's calculated exposure to the risk of harm. You decide as the adult how to trust, when to trust. You also decide if it's okay to trust based on your perception of reality. Oh, it's okay for me to trust my therapist because my perception of reality is that she has my best interest at heart. It's okay for me to trust my child because I brought that child into this world and we love each other. I can trust my child. I can also trust my husband. And I'm taking a risk to trust my husband. I'm taking a risk to trust my wife. I'm taking a risk to trust my boss because I have allowed myself to be exposed in that way. So it's my calculated exposure to the risk of harm. And I say it's okay. That ability to say yes or no to trust gets really complicated. The more trauma you experience, sometimes you can't even tell good from bad, right? Because of the way the trauma has impacted your ability to engage in relationships. So it's really hard to determine sometimes What is a situation that I can trust and what isn't? How do I know that this is a situation where I can open up and trust? A lot of people don't know that, especially if they've dealt with betrayal. So, what do? Well, they either slam the door completely shut and say, you know what? I am not going to be a part of this because I can't determine if this is worth my trust or not. Other people will go ahead and jump and then later deal with the consequences. That's not a good way to do it either, right, guys? Because it's blindly saying, you know what, I'm going to cover my eyes and jump in, and hopefully this is the right thing, because I'm tired of trying to figure out if I can trust or not. So some people just take that jump and then they deal with the dark consequences later. Other people, despite those two examples I gave you, sometimes they say, you know what, I'm just not going to trust anybody. I give up. I'm just going to deal with people at a shallow level because I can't deal with the possibility of being hurt. So the possibility of me being hurt, it just outweighs what I could benefit from that relationship over there. The mutuality, the reciprocity between me and another person, that friendship, that best friend that I'm going to possibly have, the possibility of that doesn't outweigh my fear. And so therefore, I'm not going to jump in at all. I'm just going to stay over here in my corner where it is safe. And so that's what most people do, you know? They don't feel that that relationship is worth the exposure to risk. I'm just not going to make that jump. Now, there's an idea known as, or a concept known as, generalized social trust. I mentioned it in the last chat. Generalized social trust, meaning that we have to have some form of trust that can spread from one situation to the next, to the next. That's why it's generalized. We are spreading our trust across multiple areas in our life because we have to survive. Without a generalized social trust, you can't work a job. You can't trust that the work you do is going to result in pay. You can't trust that your neighbor is decent enough to respect your space, to keep the environment clean, to mind their manners, right? If we didn't have generalized social trust, you probably wouldn't be on here with me tonight because you might not trust me, right? You may not go to the doctor's office because you don't have that generalized social trust. Without generalized social trust, we are fully marginalized. So even though, and I'm going to go to the chat box in just a little bit, even though we may say, you know what, I don't trust people, that's not all true. Just something to think about. It's not all true. Because if you didn't trust people, you probably wouldn't go to the grocery store and buy groceries because you would be suspicious of the farmers, right? I'm really giving this to you in a way that kind of causes you to kind of think about this a little bit. And this is backed by research that even if you don't trust people or say you don't trust people, there's that implicit trust, that generalized social trust that's still there. The issue is, how do I trust in relationships that are a part of my life? Or how do I trust people? You know, yes, I trust the grocery store. Yes, I trust the farmers. Yes, I trust that I'm going to get on this plane and the pilot is going to know what he's doing so we can all live and get to our destination safely. There's that trust that's still there. Psychology not only highlights that generalized social trust, but it also says this, that there's a concept known as the emancipatory theory of trust. Let me go back over that. Emancipation of trust theory. Or you could say emancipatory theory of trust. It's a theory that has been proposed by a Japanese researcher, if I can speak. And this Japanese researcher says this, that most people, and hear this really good because this really threw me when I was looking at the research from Japan, that family system, a family system that is close knit, loving, open, has healthy boundaries, is caring of one another. There's a very obvious bond between family members. The theory in the Japanese research study says that those individuals have a harder time trusting other people because their family is so close knit. Isn't that interesting? They don't think that they need to risk being deceived by the external world because the family system is so close. The research study also stated, and it has a lot of influence on how we as Americans see trust as well, this Japanese research study. The study also highlighted that people who do not come from close-knit, loving, trustworthy families tend to be a little bit more open to the exposure of risk of being deceived. And it doesn't mean that they are gullible. It doesn't mean that they are naive. It means that they seek a connection because their family hasn't given them that. So they are willing to trust other people as a result of not having a close-knit family. And that is some really twisted psychology, right? I read that research, which I'll post in the description box for you. I read that research and I'm like, oh my God, whoever thinks this kind of stuff is this way. But this research study says that if you come from a family that isn't as close knit or respectful of boundaries and loving and caring, you're more likely to be open to external relationships, and you're more likely to give them a chance than you are, or than you might be, if you were coming from a very close, loving, open, considerate family. The way you want to look at that perhaps is this way: that I have kind of opened myself up to people and they have done nothing but traumatize me. They have done nothing but wronged me. So now your question is, why did I open my heart and my mind to these people for them to just deceive me and hurt me? Well, look back at the family. So maybe you had a toxic or dysfunctional family, and therefore you were more open to people on the outside of your family. You weren't going to close off your heart and mind to other people. It's almost like this deep-seated void that most people from toxic and dysfunctional families want to fill. So they fill that void by saying, you know what, dysfunctional family, I'm going to leave you over there. I'm going to go over here and see if I could find some trustworthy relationships over here. So there's that connection. There's the psychology of that connection that you didn't get from the family. And so therefore you're more open to people in the external world, but then they hurt you and betray you. And so then you're still left in pain, So that's one way to look at that. It's very interesting. The research study also showed this, before I go to the chat box, that there is a strong link between an individual within a trustworthy family trusting the out group or people on the outside of that family. So if the family is really together, and there's nothing wrong in terms of trust or reciprocity, the family is really close knit, maybe enmeshed to a certain extent. So if there's a family like that, this research study also showed that if the family doesn't approve of an out group or people on the outside of their family, then that one individual within the family may say, you know what, I don't want to have a relationship with a neighbor. Why would I want to have a relationship with a neighbor when my entire family says they don't like the neighbor? Even though I've never met the neighbor, I still don't like the neighbor because the neighbor's not in this close-knit group called my family. They're in the out group. So we're just going to leave it at that. So that's some interesting research as well. It really is. Lastly, in this category, before I go to the chat box, research in psychology on trust and trust issues within relationships says this, that trust underlies a lot in society. It underlies social order, it underlies collective action. You know, it also underlies equality. We can't have social order. We can't have collective action as a group sometimes. And we also can't have equality if we don't trust to a certain extent, you know? So here we are in humanity, in civilization, and we are trusting to a certain extent. Now, I'm going to share this with you because I'm sure some of you wonder, well, how does a therapist trust people? And, they're the ones who see the sociopaths and the psychopaths and, all those evil pieces of humanity. I can't speak for my colleagues, but for me, trusting, and we're going to talk about this in just a little bit, trusting is a process, and for me, yes, you're right. I don't have these kind of individuals as much anymore. I did in the past before private practice. But yes, I've seen the sociopaths. Yes, I've seen child sexual abuse. Yes, I've witnessed a client who was taking an exam after being sexually assaulted or violated. Yes, I've seen a dark empath. Yes, I've had experiences in my profession with the narcissist who wants to do nothing but cause chaos. Yes, I have had incidents where after a school massacre, I've been called and I have visited the school just to see the carnage, the end result of the disaster. Yes, that's been my experience. But here's what helps me maintain a healthy mindset. And I'm going to share this with you a little bit later. I'm going to give you some tips on how to trust again. Trusting for me is not a one and a done deal. It's a continual process. So, okay, I've had that narcissistic mother who visibly assaulted her daughter. There are bumps and bruises on her daughter's arm, her daughter's neck, her daughter's face. Yes, I have to call the police, have mom arrested, call child protective services. But when that family is then situated, I have to then go home, process that situation on the inside of me. My heart, my mind, my soul processes all of that. And then guess what? I go back to the office and boom, it's a brand new day. Why? Because the trust process for me and for you as well, we're going to get into it in just a little bit, has to be a day by day, minute to minute experience. It's not I trust and then I've been wrong, so I no longer trust. Trust should become a process that I'm going to trust over and over and over again in situations where I need to trust, if that makes sense. Okay, let me pause here. I threw everything in because we missed a lot of this in the last chat. So, all right, I'm going to go back to the chat box and I just want to say hello to you guys, but I also want to answer your questions. Ellie Wynn, so glad to see you back. Thank you for signing back in. Half the battle knowledge is. Thanks for signing back in. Fairy Girl, glad that we can still have this conversation tonight. Glad to see you. Kay, hello and welcome. And thank you so much for that. You're welcome. I'm glad that these chats and videos are helpful to you. That is awesome. Okay. Oh, geez, I hit the wrong button. Please, not again. Sun and Sunflowers, hello. Thank you so much for that. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that this was able to happen, right? Even with that bad part of tech issues a couple minutes ago. Okay, Dean Inde, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Welcome. Glad to see you back. Don One, glad to see you back. Thanks for signing back in. Cherry's Jubilee, hello and welcome. Cherry's Jubilee says, I am trusting to a fault. Yeah. I used to be. Then I became a therapist and it changed. But I can see how some of you may be wondering why do I trust so easily? What is wrong with me? You may have even said that. And let me just throw out here that research in psychology says that doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're gullible. It doesn't mean that you are naive. I'm trying to think. It might have been a Japanese researcher by the name of Yamagishi. I think I'm going to make sure I post this in the description box for you, but he did a research study where he identified individuals who easily trust. And he wanted to know what's the mechanism behind this. And he says, you are not gullible. You are not naive. You are not unintelligent. It's rather the reality that you are able to risk yourself in a courageous way by saying, you know what, I'm going to trust you. So it's kind of a compliment, you know. It's you putting yourself out there in the middle of social uncertainty, and that is a strength to a certain extent. So I hope that helps, Cherry's Jubilee. Now, you do want to kind of backtrack and say, wait a minute, I need to learn, which I had to learn over time too, through my 20s, through my early 30s. I had to learn my walls need to come up a little bit, because when they don't come up, you get ran over, don't you? You get hurt, betrayed, the list goes on. So okay, Princess Aztec. Hopefully, I messed it up every time. Hopefully, I said that correctly. Glad to have you back. Yes. Did you just say the devil's a lie? My grandmother come back through you. My grandmother used to say that so much. But thankfully, we're back, right? Thank you so much for that. Cam, glad to see you back. Cam says, I grew up in a family that assumed trust with each other. I married into a family that doesn't have that. Very different outlook on each other, and I learned the hard way. Yes, absolutely. I like that, Cam, that you say I grew up in a family that assumed trust with each other. Absolutely. Absolutely. I hardly ever question my brothers. Why? Because I inherently, implicitly trust them. You know, I very rarely question my young clients, my 5-year-olds, my 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. Why? Because I implicitly trust them. There's an assumed trust there. I trust that you are innocent, that you're a child, right? That you're going to be honest with me. You're not going to lie to me or lie on me. You're going to be trustworthy. So yeah, when you grow up in a family like that and then you marry into something that's not like that, that's traumatic. That is traumatic. Yeah. Yeah. Ellie Wen says implicit trust keeps society functioning. It really does. It really does. Jessica J, glad to have you back. I don't know if I welcomed you last time. Welcome. Glad to see you. Says, sorry to say, I trust few people, even question my physician at times. I trusted my mother as she was my confidant and best friend. She's gone now. Oh, Jessica J, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. That's heartbreaking. I know what it feels like and what it looks like to lose a loved one that you wholeheartedly trust and need and value. You know, when my maternal grandmother passed away in 2020, very unexpectedly, her health just declined. You know, it was the worst pain I had ever felt, and it was so painful for my mom as well, because she was the leader, the protector, the rescuer, the hero. She was all of that. So I totally get that pain. Jessica J, I think trust can be affected by the loss of somebody that you did trust, right? It's almost like a protective mechanism. Like, you know, I'm going to put my walls up because I don't want to be hurt anymore. And I don't want to be hurt at all because my shield is gone, who was my confidant, my mother, my grandmother, right? And so when they're gone, it's so much easier to put up that wall and say, you know what, I'm not going to trust you because the one person I did trust is no longer here. So I no longer have the ability to trust anybody else, so I won't, you know? Let me also say as well, Jessica J, this is mainly for you, but for all of you who are watching as well, that I think it's safe to even question your physician. Why? Because you need to question if they understand you. You need to question if they understand what's going on in your body and in your mind. You also have the right and should always question their ethics, their morals, right? Even their political stance. You know, how do you feel about prescribing me this medication? Are you for it or not for it? You know, do you not understand what's happening in my body? And are you just throwing things at me? What's your position on that? So you have the right to even question your therapist, your doctor, your physician, even your lawyer. You know, that's wisdom. But if it hangs you up and somebody is there that you should trust and you're not, that's the issue. That's the issue. DNND, I'm probably messing that up. Please forgive me. Says, do you trust man? As a therapist, no. No, because I've seen too many scenarios that doesn't allow me to trust. So no, I don't trust men. If I have my therapist hat on, I question every motive. I question almost every statement. I question even an initiation. Well, that's a tongue twister of physical contact from a client. You know, part of that is my work experience over the past 15 years. The other piece of that is I've seen the narcissist, the sociopath, the psychopath, the dark empath. So, as a therapist, no. As a typical everyday citizen that goes out in her pajamas and bunny slippers just to go do a Target run, yeah, yeah, I do trust men in that moment. Yes, I do. Why? Because I'm not in my thinking cognitive space that I would be if I were at work. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying by that, just to be more clear as to why I shared all that, is trust ebbs and flows. It fluctuates depending on what mindset you're in, what mood you're in, how you perceive the moment or reality. It fluctuates. Thank you so much. Welcome as a member. Thank you so much for that, James. And yes, I'm so glad I got the sound sorted out too. It was one little baby button I was missing today. Man, but here's what happens when you guys see my tech issues, it shows you how human I am. And I have no clue what I'm doing. Okay, Roots B, hello and welcome back. Glad to see you. Roots B says, even trusting children, yours and your own. Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, very much true. I have some clients that I've worked with over the past couple of years, and they, how can I put this? They love their kids, but they can't trust them. I'll give you this as an example just briefly before I give you some tips on how to trust again. So I not only work with military families, but I also work with adopted families, foster families. And one of the things I've noticed in both populations is a lack of trust. My military families have a really hard time trusting because of all of the connection with the military that their family members have. So if dad's in the military, no matter what the role, it could be officer, it could be sergeant, it could be a medical doctor, a psychologist. Just being in the midst of the military in and of itself causes this internal loss of trust in the system, in the people who are there, right? And it also causes this like political stance, like I don't trust society anymore because of the trauma that I've experienced in the military. The same thing for adopted families. What I've noticed in both populations is a lack of trust with the military, but also a lack of trust in adopting and fostering certain kids. And I've had the parents come to me and say, I want to give this child back to the system because I can't trust her. She's lying. She's manipulating situations. She's triangulating. This is a 12-year-old adopted child, no blood connection. So it may be a little easier to let go for some people. I don't know. But what I've seen is sometimes I'll have adopted parents come to me and say, Tamara, I can't deal with this child anymore, and I can't even trust her or him. I need to give them back to the system. Help me understand this. Help me process all of this, And so you're right, Roots B. Sometimes even your children, blood or not, can be really difficult to trust, Kat, hello and welcome. Glad to see you back. Glad you signed back in. Kevin the Oculus, hello. So glad you could make it. I don't know if you were here with us earlier, but I'm so glad to see you. Welcome. Grace Warrior, hello. So glad to have you. Thank you so much. That's so humbling. Thank you. Thank you, Grace. And I'm glad to have you. If you weren't with us earlier, we had tons of issues, but we are back. Terry Jubilee says, I know what not being trusted feels like, so I trust too much. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I can see that. Sizzle74, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Jessica J says, I don't even trust anyone to repair my car. Me neither. Me neither. Kat says, facts. Yes, I agree. Me neither. Me neither. I'm not going to even share live what I do, but usually if my car is going to be worked on, I start thinking, do I have everything out of the car that can lead back to my profession? Some people, I don't want to tell them I'm a psychotherapist. Why? It shifts the dynamic. I don't want you to stop talking to me because you're afraid I can read your mind. So I take everything out of my car that looks like a therapist or, looks like somebody who's in the field. Oh, yeah, I do all kind of stuff because I just don't trust people working on my car. James McDonald says betrayal of trust is one of the worst experiences. Yeah, in my opinion, some things cannot be repaired, unfortunately. I agree. Not having that trust because of, let's say, being betrayed as a child, being betrayed by marriage, being betrayed by somebody who really you thought had your back or supported you, that can feel like the ultimate betrayal. And then you put your boundaries up, right? And then your walls go up and you say, you know what? I'm not willing to tear down these walls for you. So because of that, I'm just going to remain in my position. Sorry, I'm not interested in romance. Professional relationship, maybe. I'm not interested in friendship because I have a friend that betrayed me so many years ago. So why would I give you a chance? And it's kind of like this reinforced process over and over. Now, let's say, for example, and James, I'm kind of adding this to your statement, but let's say, for example, you've been betrayed all your life by your family, maybe your parents, by friends, coworkers, maybe even your boss or supervisor. And just when you were getting ready to give your neighbors some room to show you that you can trust them, they do something wrong and you slam that door back all over again, right? Or you were kind of getting to a place where you're willing to trust, like somebody, care for somebody, bring them into your space, and you heard something on the news and your brain says, never mind, absolutely not. I'm going to detach from this situation and I'm done. Betrayal trauma can be really difficult. Okay, I'm still looking for comments. Then I'm going to give you guys some ideas on how to trust, and we're going to wrap up. I'm so shocked that we made it. We made it. Grogrove says, I have a hard time trusting women. Yeah, I get you. I get you. I get you. I hear you. Women can be vicious depending on their own trauma, their own behavioral problems, their own mentality, their own fear responses, jealousy, intimidation, competition. Like, we can just go on and on. Women can be vicious. Not saying that men can't, but women can be vicious. So I totally get that. From a gender perspective, I totally get that. Y'all's Precious Jewel, I haven't seen you in a while. So glad to see you tonight. Says, I think you meant ask God to protect me from people. Yes, me too. I agree. Right? Because we can't see around ourselves all the time. And the people that you think you can trust are the ones sometimes that comes out looking like evil, Okay, looking for a few more comments before I jump back in. Dennis Robinson, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. It's been a little while. Ellie Wynn, I love how you underlie and support some of the terms that are key in the live chat. I meant to mention that. You do it all the time and I love it. Thank you for doing that. Courtney Fraser, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Okay. Night Charm, hello, welcome. Glad to have you. I don't remember seeing you, so welcome. Looking for one more comment before I go back to the content. Elizabeth, thank you so much for confirming that. Welcome back. Glad to see you back in. Alicia, welcome. Glad to have you. Alicia says, I trust God will be with me always and will be my strength. Amen. I agree. Sometimes, you have to rely on just that foundational trust, even if you don't feel that you can trust other people. You have to rely on that foundational faith, is what I meant to say earlier. Not trust, foundational faith. That faith that underlies everything in your life, right? That faith in a God that can do far beyond what we can as humans is foundational. And so you do have to rely on that, right? Because humans shift, humans change, humans outgrow certain things, and you don't know when somebody's going to change against you. You don't know what someone's intention is. You may think you do, right? But because we are so swiftly changing as human beings, it's hard to calculate what's meant and what isn't. One last one. I lied, guys. I'm so sorry. Then we're going to get back into the content. Jeremy Robinson says, I don't trust my family because I've had everything from neglect to abuse, even thievery by everyone. From my stepfather to my mother's brother to my cousin has stolen from me. And even friends have. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Jeremy Robinson. You bring up a really important point that I'm going to jump back into the content with. You may be wondering, how in the world do we get back to a place where we are going to trust? How do we do that? How do we get to a place where we can trust again? Who should we trust and not trust? How do we get back to that place? And one thing I often encourage people to do is to really be mindful of perception, because perception has a lot to do with reality. It has a lot to do with your reality, right? Perception says, I am either perceiving these individuals as not being trustworthy or being trustworthy. And there's a reason why I'm perceiving it a certain way. You want to ask yourself, how do I trust despite my perception that everybody has wronged me? And maybe it's not just perception, maybe it's reality, but you do want to ask yourself, how do I know that all of these people have betrayed me? And what's my perception of other relationships and other people? Because sometimes perception of reality can kind of fall into delusional. I think all these people, and I strongly believe all of these people have betrayed me and will betray me. So therefore, I'm not going to trust. So it can slide over into delusions. It can also, perception of reality can also slide into paranoia, that I'm just strictly paranoid. I have no proof that you are going to be against me or lose, my trust in you. I'm not going to lose my trust in you. I'm completely paranoid that you are against me. So therefore, I'm not going to give you a chance. So that's step number one. You really want to try to understand what your perception is doing to you. I'll leave it at that. I was going to add to that, but I'll leave it at that. So that's step number one. So you may be wondering, well, how do I trust again? How do I get back on the road to trusting? Well, you have to inspect your own mind, your own heart, your own soul. Am I being delusional? Am I strongly believing something that doesn't really have to be the case at all? Is the next door neighbor who's 70 years old, who's a sweet old granny and is lonely because her kids don't live in the same state, is she really going to betray my trust? Or can we have a decent friendship as neighbors? And so then you have to kind of question yourself, why am I not allowing this? Am I not allowing a friendship or a close relationship out of fear alone? Or am I paranoid? Am I delusional in this because I'm afraid? How do I get to a place where I can open the door again? The other thing, and this is what research suggests as well, is you want to check to see if you have what's called an assurance system. An assurance system. That means you want to be able to look behind you, look at your family, look at your close friends, look at, kind of like your clique or your social group. And you want to look at them and ask yourself, do I only rely on their perception of people that's outside of us? Because if that's the case, maybe they're kind of assuring me or kind of cementing in my mind that the world can't be trusted outside of this group here, And sometimes a toxic, enmeshed, dysfunctional family can do that. They can keep you so imprisoned in the family system that you don't trust outside of that system. And you may have been wronged by your family, which, only makes trusting other people even worse, right? But it's called an assurance system. It's a group, a family, some kind of clique that you rely on. I'll give you an example. Support groups are like this. There's actually a support group for the ideology of gang stalking. Do we have proof that it's a thing? No. Is it listed as a psychosis, as a paranoia, as a conspiracy theory? Yes. So the people who create social groups, though, and support groups for people who believe they're being stalked, there's a certain assurance system that's involved. And everybody in that group kind of assures one another that you're not alone. You're not seeing that wrong. You're right. The outside world is against us. So you want to ask yourself, am I a part of anything like that that could be shifting my understanding, my openness, my mind to trusting other people? Psychology also highlights that you should develop and foster new and committed relationships. Committed relationships, meaning that we have committed as friends, we've committed as coworkers, we are in this together. So developing and fostering committed relationships can help a ton, And I want to know what you guys think in the chat box. You may feel like, creating a relationship to even foster is scary, you know? But my personal suggestion, if you're in that place, would be to decide who and why you are going to lend your trust. So in other words, and I kind of go by this in my personal and professional life, I actually choose who I think I can trust, right? And if I sense a mile away that you are going to present a problem for me, then no, automatically it's a no. If I get a wrong vibe from you, my intuition is screaming at me not to go any further, then it's a no. But I constantly have to trust and retrust over and over again. And so I'm suggesting that you guys consider that as a possibility for yourself, Always look for reciprocity. Should you trust somebody that doesn't seem to be giving you what you're giving? I would say no. If somebody's not giving to you as much as you are giving to them, then I would not go forward in trusting them, But what if it's a family member? Tell me what you guys think about this. What if it's a family member? If there's no reciprocity, there's no give and take, should you still trust that individual? I say no, because that individual is a taker. And, it's clear. If there's no reciprocity, you probably shouldn't trust them, You want to also understand and explore possible paranoia. And you can do this just by a Google search. Paranoia as it relates to trust issues. And you can Google that. There's tons of information on that. I encourage you to look through that. I think that betrayal trauma is 100% real. But I also think betrayal trauma can kind of cause you to build your walls really high because it's easier. It's less risky, right? But do you want to live that way all the time? That's kind of where you want to be. Asking yourself, is this really what I want to do, what I want to be? Learning how to survive that betrayal trauma is key, See trusting others as a willingness to share your vulnerabilities. See it as a willingness to share your vulnerabilities. Anytime you open up the door to new people, you're being vulnerable, right? And you're sharing your space, your mind, your heart, your belief systems, your values, your morals, your ethics with another human being. It's a place of vulnerability. So as you move along in your life, I do encourage you to, on a case-by-case basis, Really see giving somebody trust as opening the door to all your vulnerabilities. That will cause you to keep the boundary up in situations where you shouldn't allow your boundary to fall. Does that make sense, guys? So see it as, if I open the door to you, this is letting you into all of my vulnerabilities. That is a protective mechanism. I am deciding who I'm going to open this door to. Maybe you can open your door to the nice elderly person next door, but maybe not Joe over here who's a sociopath. So you want to be fluid. You don't want to be so rigid that you lose opportunities. And one last thing, be willing to shift. Psychology says be willing to shift. Maybe you can trust your neighbor for a year, but next year you're going to have to shift the boundary because they're not that same person, or maybe things have changed in your life. So be willing to shift. Psychology highlights that implicit and explicit trust operates in a way that maintains our survival. Why? Because we are constantly shifting our trust and our boundaries, and we have to. We're not staying rigid, in society. We are, how can I put this? We are flexible. That's the word I'm looking for. We are flexible so that the world can operate in a manner that is livable. And so we have to, in our personal lives, also be flexible, right, guys? We have to shift. It's rough, but we have to do it. Okay, this is a rough topic, right? I'm going to be talking more about trust issues as we go into the holidays. There's a lot of good stuff coming up. So join me next weekend as well. We're going to be talking about, I'm not going to drop that. Nope, I'm going to post it, and then I'll let you guys be excited about the topic because I think a lot of you are going to be able to relate to it. I also have upcoming a podcast collaboration where we're going to talk about betrayal trauma. So as soon as that information becomes available, I'll make sure that I post it on the channel. Before we go, guys, I'm going to go back to the chat box, see what you guys are seeing, and then I'm definitely going to wrap up because we've been on here way, way too long. Between the tech issues and then going back over this whole live chat. So JKD Merit Master Group, yes, it's working. So glad to have you back. Thanks for signing back on. Roots B says, avoid drunks. Oh my God. Roots B, I agree, but that's kind of out there. Kat says, this brings tears to my eyes. Fact, Tamara. I'm sorry. It just sounds like it's hitting home, right? Yeah. Princess Aztec, I'm going to post that. I like that. Just so people can see it while I scroll the chat box. I agree. Me too. Me too. For you, as well as for me, my cultural heritage in the Native American Apache cultural group is really spiritual. In the African American side of things, there's spirituality there too. So in the German culture, in some German households, there's spirituality. So that's a part of me, and it's a part of you, just based on the Native American tribe that you're associated with as well. So that's a part of this whole process as well. Culture, it really matters. It really does. Night Charm says, both of my parents divorced, remained to, I'm sorry, let me go over this again. Both of my parents divorced, remarried to other people, put the spouse before the child. I feel that's where a lot of the trust issues come from. Yeah, I can see that. I don't like that. I hate when, and I hate using the word hate, but I'm going to express it here this way. I hate when parents remarry and they put the spouse ahead of the child. That should never happen. You can leave. I have to be here with my child. I've birthed them. This is my blood. My child needs me in this big old chaos driven world, So should the spouse be first? No. When it comes to remarrying and creating a blended family, yes, you have to be connected as the wife, the husband team. You have to be connected as the marital couple, right? But that goes up into a certain place, and then there should be boundaries. It should end there, Yeah. Groger, I'm going to put that up on the screen so people can see that. Yeah. Enmeshment can be an unspoken emotional incest. It can be. It doesn't always. Sometimes it's just an emotional dependency, you know? Courtney Fraser, hello and welcome. If I missed you earlier, Courtney Fraser says, I am way too trusting of others, yet at the same time, I have trouble trusting others due to trauma from family and outside of the family. Yeah, absolutely. It's an ebb and a flow kind of thing, you know? It's a little bit of a chaotic tornado sometimes. Yes, you can, trust Bob, but you don't trust Bill, who's in your family. Yes, you can trust this year, maybe next year it'll all change. It's a constant shifting, you know? It's normal. JKD Marin Master Group says, you guys, I think the most important thing in mental health is that moment in the morning where all problems pop up and come to a head. You think about them, feel what you feel, and calm right down. Oh, sometimes. Some people have that experience at bedtime. Kevin the Oculus says disorganized, fearful, avoidant attachment style is brutal. Not sure how you can come back from that. Yeah, that's so very true. So very true. I might get into that a little bit later in our live chats before the end of the year, because you guys are going to want to know about holidays, the psychology of coming together during holiday time, the psychology of going no contact during holiday time. So Kevin the Oculus, I will try to bring this up as well. Yep, I'll take a note of it. Chat says, I had my abuser lie to my family after dating me secretly, and he turned around to date my younger sister out in the open. Yeah. Oh my God. A true predator, right? I'm so sorry that happened to you. It's awful. Free girl, I was trying to put you up here. Here we go. Just so people can see what you're saying. Jessica J, thank you so much for that. And you're welcome. To me, validation without trust is nothing. Anybody can validate you, right? I'll tell you everything you want to hear. But it's another thing when somebody can validate you with research, facts, psychology, personal experience, knowledge, and then you also trust them. That is a wonderful relationship, right? My mom is like that. I can trust her. She can validate me. She doesn't please me by telling me everything I want to hear. She just validates what I'm feeling in a scientific, psychological way where I know she's not telling me everything I want to hear. I know she's telling me something that has firm basis, And so that's wonderful. That's a person you want to trust for sure. Yeah. Jeanette, you've been awesome tonight. So I'm going to read your comment. Jeanette says, maybe there was a lot of denial of my personal emotional disconnecting. So speaking up, wait a minute, let me go back. It's kind of all running together. So maybe there was a lot of denial of my personal emotional disconnecting. So speaking up when my personal boundaries simply needed affirmation in order to connect and communicate to build trust. That's a little spotty for me, but I will pull from that and say, makes sense. Makes sense. I hear what you're trying to say. Yeah. You had to adjust your personal boundaries. That's what I hear you saying in order to connect and communicate to build trust. I like that. I hope that makes sense to the rest of you. It took me a while to unravel it, but I definitely get it. Okay, guys, I'm going to go through just a couple more and then we can wrap up. James McDonald says, one thing for sure, though, I've learned to trust my own feelings about people and circumstances over time. It has saved me from a lot of heartache. Yes, me too, James McDonald. I very much agree. Yep. That little small feeling that you get in the midst of somebody. Look at it. That little small, that thought that pops up out of nowhere about a person or a situation or an event or an encounter. Listen to it. Sometimes I can sit with clients, and the minute I feel on the side of me that I'm getting anxious or something's bothering me or I can't fully be comfortable with you, that tells me something's going on in the exchange. And you don't even have to be talking to me. You could be talking to somebody you brought to therapy with you. And if I feel something, I have to take another look at that. Maybe not in the moment, but later I certainly do. So James McDonald, I very much agree with that. Okay, guys, I'm scrolling just to make sure I haven't missed someone. Sammy, hello. Thank you so much. I'm doing better because I was able to at least get back on here with you guys. I feel like I'm abandoning you when I have tech issues and I have to sign off. You know what I mean? So thank you so much. I hope you're doing well too, Sammy. Let life love you. Hello. I haven't seen you in so long. Welcome. Glad to see you. Tia Hawkins, hello. Yeah. Maybe this is some kind of reason why you should have tuned in, right? So glad to have you. Welcome, welcome. Shantae Unique, hello, welcome. Okay, just making sure I haven't missed anyone. Jennifer Francis, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. I don't ever remember seeing you, so welcome. Jennifer Francis says, I used to see the good in others, but I have learned some people are evil inside and don't have any good in them. Absolutely. There's some people who simply do not have any good in them. You are correct. Narcissists, sociopaths, dark empaths, evil people. They just don't have any good in them, you know? One topic that's coming up next week is the psychology of evil people. But I'm going to break that down. So be all set and ready for next week, guys. Those of you who feel that there are evil people, and there's some research that suggests some people don't meet diagnostic criteria for narcissism, sociopathy, dark empaths, but they are evil. So we can talk about that next week for sure. Okay, guys. Kat, I was just going to say, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Kat, thank you so much for the super chat. And thank you to the rest of you yesterday who gave super chats. I'm always grateful. You don't have to do that, but I'm grateful when you do. Thank you so much for that. Kat says, I was disrespected by my parents first, which set the stage for my dysfunctional relationships I am now free from. Absolutely. Remember, parent-child relationship is the most significant relationship in our lives. And if that is ruined or disrupted, sometimes it can lead us down a negative road, right? For those of you I could not get to, Elizabeth, I'm so sorry. I know you must. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I know that pain. I'm sorry that you have to go through that. Yeah. Hang in there. I totally get that. Star says, good to hear you now. Yes, so glad. Star says, trust is a daily learning experience. Sad is the day when you learn members of your own family is not trustworthy. I very much agree with that. Very much agree with that. Guys, next week, I'm hoping we have absolutely no tech issues. I look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you for hanging in there and signing back on. And I hope this was helpful. Really and truly value each of you on this channel. I truly do. So thank you. Guys, I will see you in the next live chat. Anything we missed, please repost in the comment section. That helps the channel too. And I will answer those that I haven't been able to get to tonight. So love you so much. Hope to see you soon. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful Saturday and Sunday. Bye.